Hi everyone. In the last few weeks I've noticed a huge surge in questions about how to navigate. I primarily play on the Finnish Virtual Pilots IL-2 server, and at the time of the recording we are currently on the Moscow map, which is probably the hardest map to navigate on in IL-2. So I'm not surprised there are a lot of people looking for help. I wanted to make a guide that is specific to Finnish, and it should be the definitive guide for a brand new player to learn how to navigate. And I kind of built this video in a way that it should be translatable to any of the other servers. If you are a more experienced pilot, you may want to skip the video this week, but if you would like to help, I encourage you to watch the video and to include any tips that I may have forgotten in the comments below. If this is your first time here, this channel focuses on multiplayer sim gameplay. So if you're into that, please subscribe. Now, before we really dive into the video, I do want to be upfront. I put a lot of time talking about the airfields and the actual targets, and my thinking is that if you don't know where to take off from, and if you don't even know where to go, it makes no sense to actually explain how to navigate. So just keep that in mind. If you already know where you want to lift from and where you want to go, then skip ahead. You can use the chapter feature. So let's go into this. At the time of this recording, the Finnish server has about 5 different spawns to choose from. Now, what we see here is the map, and this is the front line. I'm going to go ahead and just click Germany so you can see the blue and the red. Now, let's go with the first one. So the first one is the German supply air start, and the Russians also have one here. This is an air spawn, and in here you can only pick aircraft that resupply airfields. They do not carry paratroopers. They carry cargo, which you can see here. So you would only pick this spawn if you want to go and supply an airfield, because the airfields have supply. And if you're not familiar with this, I have another video which explains all the rules and mechanics of the Finnish server, which I'll link above on the top right. So air supplies are clear. Again, this is only for resupplying airfields. Then we have the rear airfields. There are 2 different sectors. Here's sector 1 on the map, sector 2. And each sector has 3 different airfields. So right here is the rear airfield at Novoye. And I can tell that this is the rear airfield because 1, it's typically further back than the other 2 airfields in the sector, but also because it has bombers. So you could, and it also has the Ju-52. And here you can see it doesn't carry cargo, it's carrying paratroopers. And these resupply the tank spawns at the front. This would be the blue smoke. If you click on the Russian side, Ju-52, we see the red smoke here. So those are the red airfields. So if you want to do heavier bomb runs, if you want to do paradrops, you would come out of the rear airfield, and they also have fighters as well. Now for the Allied side, there's something unique where, because you see the rear airfields have an American symbol and not a Soviet symbol, the rear airfields for the Allies, the P-51s get G suits, and on top of that, the P-38s also carry more. So let's look at the front airfield. The P-38 here, front, has 2 weapon slots that are locked. And the reason for this is for balance, because they were crushing the front line. The rear P-38 has the additional bomb racks. Okay, so basically you could think of the rear airfields, more or less they have heavier payloads for the planes, or planes that can take care of heavier payloads. And then for the Allies, they have G suits. So then we go into the forward airfield, or sometimes people just call it a regular airfield. Dugino is the regular airfield, or the forward airfield for sector 1. Now here we see that there are no heavy bombers. We still do have Stukas, we have Ducks, and we have the 110, but primarily it's fighters. So that's how we know it's a forward airfield. And then for the Allied airfield, Vatulino, we see that there are no heavy bombers. And again, the P-38 is the front version. Any P-51s that spawn here will not have G suits. Then we get into temp airfields. And temp airfields are generally the closest ones to the front line. Again, there's 1 per sector. So here's the German one right here at Zenino. and then the allied one is right here. Now, temp airfields are special because they start closed at the beginning of a map reset, so they need to be opened up with a supply run. The second thing is they do not have flak, so they're not protected, and because you're allowed to strafe on the server, it is very risky to take off from there. So if you're brand new, I would typically not recommend taking off from a temp airfield. I would take off from a rear or a regular or forward airfield, but not a temporary airfield. Again, because it does not have flak. The last type of spawn is the tank spawns or the panzer spawns. Now, this is really important to note because the tank spawns altogether are the same. So here are the Russian ones. We have a handful of vehicles. This one, again, the same types. The German one, a handful, and another handful. Again, exact same vehicles. So which one's the best one to spawn at? If you look very closely at the sectors, you will see that there's this black circle, and this is CP1. This is really the objective that the tankers go for. So if you didn't know what was going on in the front and you want to focus on the CP, you probably want to take the panzer spawn or tank spawn that's closest to the CP to go fight over it. The other ones are primarily used for flanking or for attacking the AI at the front line. And then for sector 2 or sector 1, excuse me, we have the CP1 here. So, and you see there's 2 panzer spawns right next to it, and there should be a third one down here for both sides. So that's how you decide of where you want to lift from. Now, where do we want to go? And each sector has a rear depot, a front depot, and a station industrial. There's additional targets like bridge and convoys, and let's go through some examples of what they look like. So I'm conscious of the fact we are many minutes into this video and I haven't explained yet how to get anywhere. The reason for that is you need to understand where you can lift from and what your destinations look like. If you know how to navigate, that's great, but if you don't know what your destination looks like, you can go right by it. So this is what a ship convoy looks like. They're either destroyers or merchant ships. This is what the front line looks like, and the easiest way to see that is the big black smoke, so you can use this on the Finnish server to get around. Notice the AI defensive positions, the dugouts. Sometimes the front line doesn't have a big black smoke, it might be these 3 smaller gray ones. Then that brings us into the railway industrial targets. This is generally anchored around a railroad station. So the train is a target, and also the station immediately around the train. Now, these targets are a bit tricky because it's not just this, there'll be other targets that look industrial and they'll be embedded into the city. So it may not be really easy to know, and it just takes time to play to figure out what's what, because it's in the city. So, I bombed the station, I'm looking around, you see a lot of city. And if you look very closely, when I turn my head back over, you're going to see that there's another position that's been bombed out, and that's also part of the target, which you'll see right here. So all these industrial looking warehouses. So just keep that in mind. If you're new, I would say that this is probably the hardest target to hit successfully. When I first started playing Finnish, I used to hit the wrong targets all the time. This is a rear depot. This is basically just a huge giant factory. These typically have like a big wall around it. They're pretty easy to find once you see them, but do keep in mind that they have some rendering issues where at range they may not be rendering, especially if you're at altitude. Then we go into the CP, what it looks like when you're playing a tank. Now on the left-hand side here of the road, you see that little dirt mound. That's a telltale sign that you're near the CP, because generally there's these mounds around the flagpole or the CP itself. The CP actually is a flagpole, so I see it here and I'm turning my tank around, and you can see that a German flag is starting to go up on the flagpole, and that says that you're capturing it. I'm not sure if you need to stay for the entire time for the flag to rise to the top, but you get the idea. So once we've decided to go somewhere, you're going to spawn in, and the key thing here is you can notice that this airfield is a slightly different color than the other airfield. This tells you which airfield you spawned in from. You want to remember what airfield you spawned from, but if you forget, you can use this. So now that we've set this kind of groundwork down. Now let's talk about actually how to do navigation. First example is how to navigate using a map. The Finnish server has a map that's embedded into the website, and it's synced with what's going on the map right now, or in the game right now. So it has all the targets and all the airfields marked, which is great because if you want to, let's say, bomb this rear depot, and you know you want to come out of this airfield, what you could do while you're in the game is just alt tab real quick, go onto the Finnish site, click the plane icon, click on the airfield you want to lift from, and then click on the target that you want to bomb. Put in your speed that you're going to be going on average. So let's say it's going to be 350. And it makes this line. And this is 99.9 kilometers away. To fly there, you would fly at a heading of 60 degrees. To RTB, once you get there, or to return to base, is 240 degrees. And at an average airspeed of 350 kph, it'll take 17 minutes and 7 seconds to get there. Now, what we notice is our flight path takes us right over the direction of an enemy airfield, which we want to avoid. Because let's assume we're flying bombers. So in that case, what we might do is make another flight. So we would click this, and then we want to find something along the way that it makes it clear to change our heading. And I like this airfield right here, because airfields are really easy to point out, and it's next to a really huge city. So I might click this for the first waypoint, and then I would click up, and then I would hit 350, and we get the information here. So the first waypoint is 89 kilometers at a heading of 94 degrees, and it'll take us 15 minutes and 15 seconds to get there. So all we have to do is lift, go east, or 94 degrees, and be on the lookout for an airfield. And we see there's an airfield here, so we would count basically on the way. First airfield, okay. And then, oh, we're at the second airfield. That means we need to turn. And where are we going to turn to? We turn to a heading of 358 degrees for 55.6 kilometers. And if we're still at the same speed, we will reach the target in 9 minutes and 31 seconds. And then to RTB, we would simply fly on this heading back, hit this waypoint, and then fly on this heading back 274 degrees, and then we'll end up RTBing. So that's one way to do it on Finnish. Now let's imagine you're playing on a server that doesn't have the objectives like this. Then there's this other website, IL2missionplanners.com, which I'll link in the description. And with this, it would be the exact same thing. So we are going to be this is Moscow map. And let's say we know our airfield is this one, and we want to bomb this target that's, let's say, right here. So again, we can draw different heading lines. We're going to fly here, and then we're going to fly to the north. Now, the airspeed thing is very important to note because this is going to be true airspeed, and your cockpit is going to be showing indicated airspeed. So you might be going faster than you think. So keep that in mind. And you see 375 is 17 minutes. Let's say we're going 500. It goes down to 12 minutes. And that's because it's, the faster you're going, the less time it'll take you to get there. So this is a really great method to navigate. If you're doing really long bomber flights, if you want to avoid certain areas, I would really recommend this. If you wanted to do this purely visual without using a heading tool, then you would need to count rivers. So you would fly directly east and count rivers, or be on the lookout for a really large city. That's something that's really important to keep in mind. So let's go into an example. I am lifting from this airfield, and I want to go to the northern sector. Now, when the video starts, we're already kind of on the way. And I want you to see how I'm like mentally think about and trying to orientate myself in order to validate that I'm heading in the right direction. I'm flying along, and I notice I'm about west of the big black smoke. I know I'm flying from the southern sector to the northern one, so I now know I'm west of the southern objective. I then notice these two rivers that join together and they form a lake. I then scan the map to see if I can see two rivers that join to make a lake, which is right here. So I have a better idea of where I am now. I then look around for other things. I notice this river, and by looking around, I'm just getting a picture. I see that there's another 2 rivers that join. So I know I'm on the right path, and then I know what to follow because I know this river will take me to the city where I need to go to. So I have now validated how I'm going to get to the objective. And this lets me focus on looking around to make sure I'm not going to get bounced, because basically I've already figured out the hard part of how I'm going to get there. But making sure that I'm on the right path, I do want to keep looking around. And one thing I do want to mention is you're not able to see everything around you because your cockpit blocks a lot of the visibility. So you might be flying right over something and already be at your destination and not know, because it's essentially like it's past your cabin, and your cabin's obstructing your view. So that's why it's good to roll around and to move your head to get different clues. Now, winter's a little bit tricky to fly because the rivers freeze over. So at distance, it just looks like snow. So it's really easy to get lost in winter. Now, we're going to keep heading along. And I just want to show you of how I validate that I'm actually getting to where I need to be. And you can see here that I haven't seen the northern sector smoke yet. So, I don't have full validation that I'm there. And by tipping my nose down slightly, I can see there's a very large city up ahead. And yep, there it is. And that's what I was looking for. So then I look at my map, and there we are. So we now know how to navigate by using the map tool, and we've also introduced the idea of being able to just look around and build a picture to triangulate where you are by looking at landmarks. So let's talk about landmarks and some considerations. Rivers and bodies of water are the easiest ones to use. Now in winter, like I said earlier, they get tricky because in winter the rivers freeze over, and lakes also. Forests can sometimes be used, but on some maps like Veliky, Luki, and Moscow, the forests are so numerous and so large that it makes almost no point to use them. You have to try to find forests that are like kind of a weird shape. Let's also talk about altitude. If you're flying really low to try to evade interception, great. The issue though is that because you're flying so low to the ground, you can't really build a big picture of where you are. So you have to be very vigilant with timing and using heading lines, or you need to count rivers where you go along a direction and there's a certain amount of rivers that you need to cross before you can pop up to get a picture. So that's also something to kind of think about. I use that quite often actually when I'm doing Yabo runs, is river counting. Flying high in a weird way, and I'm talking about like 5K plus, should make it easier to navigate, right? Because you can see more and you build a bigger picture. The issue with that is the rendering distances of IL-2, especially buildings. When you're flying up really high, everything almost looks the same, and some things like depots don't render. So that can get tricky too. Also clouds. Clouds pretty much are around 2, 3, maybe even 4K. So if you're flying at 5K, you might look down and you might just see only clouds, and then you can't see the ground, and then you can't really build a picture at all. So also keep that in mind. If you're flying around 2K or 1K, that's probably the best altitude in order to navigate. The last thing I want to mention is to give you an idea of how to use the heading tool, or how to wean yourself off the heading tool, I should say. So with the heading tool that I showed earlier, it's very easy. You take off from point A, you fly along a path for a certain amount of time at a certain distance or speed, and you'll reach your destination. Now that's great, but what if you deviate off that path? Now that's fine, and you need to get to that point where you're not just flying in an absolute straight line. But one thing you can do to kind of wean yourself off of the heading tool is try to make a point of reference. So if you're flying along a straight line and you deviate off of it, you need to look down and find something that'll tell you that that's your heading line, that's like the path that you're on. And if you can do that, then you can start venturing out, and all you have to remember is that, like, oh, I turned off and headed east, and I know I turned off east at the point of where this bridge is at, and then all you have to do is basically work your way back west at some point and find that bridge again, and then you know what your heading tool is. The last thing I'll mention is that it is much easier to navigate once we get into late war, or once you get to late war planes. And the reason for that is several of the planes have radio beacons. And the radio beacons will point you back toward an airfield. They will not point you toward a temporary airfield on the Finnish server. So when you have the late war planes, pretty much you only have to worry about getting to target. And once you're at target, you could just rely on the radio beacon and fly back. So I hope you guys find this helpful. If you have any questions, please let me know in the description and I will try to answer them. If you are a more experienced player and you think I missed something, please feel free to put it in the description as well, and the new players may find it useful. Hope you guys have a good day. If you found this helpful, or if you like the channel, please consider subscribing, and I hope you guys have a good one. Thank you.